We have a special Facebook Live. We threw this out last night. We've been seeing lots of questions kind of go through different social media websites, articles on, online stories, those types of things, and a couple questions coming here and there. And we figured, we're a week away from the referendum on January 16th. And we wanted to take a few minutes to answer the questions from our folks joining us here live. We have a couple things I've kind of collated through social media that I've seen that I think we should address and answer, because I'm not sure if people are confused or what's going on, or even if it's the information's not correct that I've seen out there in social media. So that's what we're here doing today. Let me just ask how you're doing. We're a week away from the referendum.
Excuse me, Bob. How am I doing? I'm doing okay. Yeah, this has been hard. Let's be honest. It's been on top of the job, of being superintendent in a school district with 13,000 kids. This is just a full-time job in itself.
Sure.
So trying to manage everything, and certainly my family has sacrificed quite a bit. I'm tired. I'm ready. I'm ready for the community to speak and have a voice on next Tuesday, and then turn the page together. Yes or no, at least we have a decision and we move forward. So I'm doing okay. I was going to comment, you kicked this thing off like, "Good afternoon, Dr. Bauer." I was like, "Whoa, is Bob?" Because Bob's always Mr. Energy.
Oh, sorry about that. I mean to bring the energy. Yeah, I'm in the same boat too. It seems to be a mono topic a lot of times, and we're still doing all the other things we do every day to keep the North Penn School District running, and that's no different for North Penn Television and the types of things we do. So it's a lot. I am also eager for this community vote next Tuesday, and the one thing when I talk to neighbors and friends and family and everybody, you have to vote. And that's the big thing, that if you're registered to vote and you've taken the time to register to vote and all those things, please vote. This is such a transformational, generational decision, the types of things we've said, that, a vote, yes or no, is critical to inform, us, and this community will decide what we're going to be doing for this, certainly in my time here, that's for sure.
Sure.
And that's where I keep saying, vote. Everybody's got to vote. So,
Bob, if I may,
yes.
Just real quick, couple things, housekeeping items before we begin. I am seeing one comment pop up.
I did see that too. So hopefully,
if Mrs. Bakish is watching,
I'm going to shout. I'm going to mute myself and shout here for a second.
Meanwhile, I will continue with some housekeeping items. So the objective here is for us to answer questions.
Mrs. Fakish hears us.
Okay.
Yes, that is the objective. Chastity, check your phone settings. Maybe it's a Bluetooth thing. Maybe you're in your car. Just check it out. I know that we have sound, at least with Mrs. Fakish, and I've got a couple of We Are Goods there, so I didn't mean to interrupt. So
got it. I was going to say, you're talking to Chastity. She can't hear you, Bob. Why are you talking to her?
That's true. Sorry, Chastity.
That said, the objective here is to answer questions. And we will not allow anyone in particular to dominate the conversation.
Sure.
Because it's an opportunity for a lot of people to contribute and ask. So I ask, hold your questions for right now, because Bob's going to kind of get us through a couple of the themes that he's been seeing. He really surveys social media. That's part of his job. He keeps his ear to the ground, and he's trying to see what the community is saying or asking. And I hope to address those things. But if you're the type of person who's going to blast 7 or 8 questions, we're not answering them all. So please prioritize, think of a question or two that you would really like us to speak to, and we will do our best. Our objective is to answer as many people's questions as possible, to clear up any misinformation. The objective all along has been to just have informed voters. And the one thing through this whole process, and for those who attended the forum or watched it online, Bob, I ended with a comment like, I was really proud to be the superintendent that night, because there were people in the audience who was very clear were unhappy with the project. There were people who were absolute no's. There were people who were absolute yeses. It didn't matter that night. People were respectful. They were polite. They asked good questions, and they came up to me, and I had folks that just flat out said, "Thank you for doing this. This must not have been easy. Thank you for being transparent and listening and hearing concerns and answering questions." The thing that has disappointed me since is, for lack of better phrasing, the propaganda that's out there. The intentional misinformation from people on the yes and the no side is disappointing to me. I've really tried to be an honest individual who's just like, I got nothing to hide. I will talk with you about anything. And I'm hoping that this session between you and I, Bob, we said we're willing to stay on here for about an hour and just clear things up. I want people to have their questions answered. So here we are. Let's fire away. We have not done much of a pregame for this. It was really like, hey, Todd, come on.
About what we're hearing. That's exactly what we're doing here. And, I appreciate that. And we do have a question right in the top. And this is one of the things I've been hearing too, and was on the top of mine as well. So Aaron asked this question too. More details on the no option. And I know you spoke to this before about why isn't 403 million minus 97 million, which is the referendum, the high school renovation cost at, say, 306 instead of 236? Why the difference? And then, if you could talk about that quickly, and then what really is a no? And, in fairness, we haven't talked a lot about the no because it's a systems upgrade. So tell us why the 403 is not 306 to do the high school and do 10 through 12 reimagined, and why the difference between 403 and what is a no with $236 million.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah. So it has been, it's challenging because you feel like you answer the same questions over and over and over, but I recognize that some members of our community have hopped into the conversation now, honestly, 4 or 5 years.
Time. Sure.
Yeah.
The first time.
4 or 5 years in. So they don't know. And that's not their fault. They just weren't tuned in. They didn't think it impacted them, whatever. So here we are. And I have answered this question quite a bit, but once again, there is a misconception as to why the difference between 403, which is what was option 1, is now yes, and 236, which was option 2 and is now no. Why is that difference not 403 minus 236? Right? That's your phone.
It is. I got rid of it.
And the reason is because if we do not move 9th grade to the high school, the renovations and changes at the middle level in particular will need to be more extensive than if we do. I hope that helps to. So, for example, if we don't move 9th grade, all 3 middle schools need to stay online. We will need all 3 buildings. There's no doubt about it, right? We have 3,000 kids who are in grades 7 through 9 right now. And if we keep 3,000 kids in those schools, unless we're going to do a massive addition, we will need to keep all 3. So regardless, we will need to have the financial flexibility to do more significant renovations at the middle level if 9th grade does not move. So the difference is not as simple as subtract 403 from 236 from 403 and get blank. It is really that financial flexibility is the difference between those 2 numbers.
I want to talk middle school here in a moment. There's some questions about that, but I want to go back to answering what does no look like?
Yep.
What is the no? And another part that came up, and I rewatched the forum and I've seen it lots of time and I edit it, so I see it in front of my eyes lots of time. Mr. Schrader, who's our architect, did say in the community forum, a fully gutted, fully renovated no is what it is. And it, that's a comment in the middle of a community forum. But what is a no? What have we been saying all along of what the no vote means to adjust a renovated high school? And by the way, just a renovated my high school is still $236 million. But let's talk about no for a moment and what that does for this building.
Okay. So the analogy I drew at the forum, Bob, was taking a 1971 and restoring it. A 1971 vehicle and restoring it. New paint, new floor, new interior, new potentially engine, right? So the bones remain the same, but all those finishings change. Cabinetry, finishing, floors, lights, ceilings, windows. Walls don't move. We've been using the phrase, I don't know where it came from. It was probably something that slipped out of my mouth, but right sizing. Right sizing the facility we have now for even 3,100 kids as it is, because it was originally designed for about 2,400 kids, right? The band room it becomes ADA accessible, right? Mm-hmm. We are required to, once we touch the old part of the building, to make it ADA accessible, which is absolutely necessary. It does not give us a band room that can hold 200 kids. It does not give us a second story to that band room. It finishes the band room that's there and makes it ADA compliant. So a no vote is a refurbishing of the current structure, the entire structure, including K-pop, right? The whole building gets refurbished. It does not change the footprint or the structure of the current building. And boy, these questions are coming in really fast.
Hot and heavy. Yeah.
And I love it. And I want to answer them all. So let's keep moving.
That's great. So let's go back to the middle school conversation. I think in that flexibility, and we've said all along that, we really have to decide the ninth grade question first before we can make decisions about K through 8, right? We have to decide, is ninth grade moving to the high school or not? So in that flexibility, we bring ninth grade here. Some of the things out there. Are we for sure closing in middle school? Are we for sure doing certain things? And we're all distracted by the emojis that pop up. We just learned this, that when you do this, it automatically didn't do it.
Yeah, that was unintentional. So
yeah, I know.
Viewers at home, I'm an animated talker. So if I do something like this, for example,
there we go.
There are graphics now.
We learned this recently. We don't want to get off topic, but we got distracted. So if you see some emojis pop up, it's because we're using our hands to talk. But going back to the middle school question, what happens to middle schools and why is that flexibility different with a yes vote compared to a no vote? And you talked a little bit about that, but are we committed for sure that we're closing a middle school? Are we committed for sure that we're moving grade structures? What does that no vote and yes vote mean in that scenario?
Okay. So when you have an organization that has 22 facilities, right? We cannot in any way, shape, or form make all these decisions at one time. What we do know is the impacts of a yes or a no, Bob. And when we sat down and did a comprehensive study of our facilities and which buildings need what, from parking lots to roofs to gymnasiums to capacity, all those things. What we do know is that the first decision that needs to happen is whether or not we move ninth grade. And that is really what is on the ballot next week. Is ninth grade moving, yes or no? And this is what it would cost now. And I have said over and over again in a variety of these Facebook Live sessions and the forum and in private meetings and home and school meetings that the comment was made to me at some point saying, it sounds as though that money will be spent anyway. Whether it's spent at the high school or spent at the middle schools or spent in the, that's true. I mean, we have finite needs and that has a price tag. It's just where and how are we meeting those needs? So the first decision is ninth grade, yes or no? If the decision is yes, then a domino would be, what about sixth grade? Right? And we could decide right now, oh yeah, we want to move sixth grade out of the elementary schools. Well, that's not happening if we don't move ninth grade. And it requires the community to vote on whether or not ninth grade is going to move in order for us to afford that. I have seen, and we'll get into the finances. I'm sure you're going to ask those questions. I have seen commentary like the law is written in such a way. Act 1 is a cap on increases for real estate taxes from a school district. And it says in order to go above that, you need approval of your electors, right? That's what this is. So there have been some nefarious comments that this is illegal. Yeah. That's not true. The law's written in this way. In order to do this for this purpose, this is the amount. This is what we're asking, yes or no.
And that's like right there. Let's be very clear. So if this referendum, yes, passes next Tuesday for the $97 million, are we allowed to go above $97 million for this?
No.
As part of this referendum? Can we exceed it because prices have gone up in other pieces?
No. And certainly when you have financial advisors, this is what they do. So people say, well, what about inflation? What about this? What about construction contingency? What about unforeseen circumstances? That's all in the financial modeling. Certainly we do these things, right? Mr. Scrocky is exceptional at his job. Sure. And he also has financial advisors and organizations he works with to guide this, gotcha. Right? So yes, that has all been considered, but that's where we are with that.
So I'm going to go to some of the comments so we hit these because they are kind of cross-referencing what I've seen, which makes sense. That's what people have questions about. And we have a question here. I'm going to head and use a
new feature.
Well, yeah, let's just see if this works here.
Okay.
Here we go. This is from Michelle. Clarify the amount of money and length of time that will be spent on modulars should there be a no vote. So we're in a no vote. We're renovating the high school. We now don't have any kind of swing space to move people to. So we've talked about this. We need to do a modular farm here somewhere on campus. So cost, length of time in mods during renovation. What's that look like in a no? Thank you, Michelle, for your comment.
Okay. I'm going to use analogies a lot during this discussion because I think it helps. If you're remodeling your kitchen and they pull out everything from your kitchen is offline for a while. That may cause you to go out to dinner. That may cause you to go eat at a neighbor's house or modify your plan, but you can't use your kitchen. That's what happens in a building renovation, right? We have to close an area of the building, renovate, and then we need a swing space. That would be modular construction in a novo. There's not extra space. We are at capacity at the high school as it is, right? So there's not extra space or spare classrooms just sitting around. We would have to bring in classrooms.
Yeah.
The estimated cost and the extent of the modular construction that would be necessary is estimated at $15 million for the life of the project. It could potentially slow the project as well, right? Because that could take longer because it's not as much space as the addition would be. We just don't have the room to stack modulars all over the place. Rather, build an addition adjacent to the actual structure itself. So could it slow? We were discussing timeline and changes in a yes and a no. I suspect it will be, within a margin of error one way or the other. But it would be certainly a field of modulars, whether it's over by the bus loop or back behind APOD in the back of the building. And that is estimated because it's not just people say, well, modulars don't cost that much. It's not just a modular. It is staircases, plumbing, electric service, like all these things.
All the connections to the building and whether we have a covered area and making sure they're ADA compliant to get into the modulars, all of those things. Honestly, we've been doing these types of things at other schools in the past when we had smaller renovations. We've got to provide projectors and install those kinds of things. So we're building those things that are going to go away when the renovation's complete. Let's talk about our taxes here again. And then the question over the referendum increase, again, being very clear that it's over the legal limit. So we don't have Mr. Scrocky in the room with us here, but Act 1 is what is determined each year of what a school district is allowed to tax up to in any given year. That's Act 1, and that's been around for, this is where Steve needs to be here, since 2000. Steve, if you're in here, go ahead and put that in there.
2006, I believe.
Yeah. So Act 1 is the limit the state determines each year of what we can tax up to. And this referendum will be beyond legally. It's all legal. And that's what the community decides on, whether or not we have the ability to borrow beyond the Act 1 index for the purposes of this renovation. So the question really here is, I'm looking here, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this up here too for David Long. Thank you, David. How long would the school board be able to exceed Act 1? And that's the 4.1 is not the annual tax increase. The board determines that every year. Act 1, the limit is determined every year. It's different every year based upon different indexes. And all school districts have to work through that. So how long will this referendum increase be in effect for? Is it over just the length of the bonds or just the construction period? How long is that length?
Okay. So the only reason that if this passes, with a yes vote on Tuesday, 1 week from today, January 16th, have a plan. Okay. If it passes, we may only raise taxes for that up to that amount beyond Act 1. And it is typically in a fixed amount of time. Okay. So I believe, and I see that Steve is engaging.
He's in there.
with the community via text. Great. Good to see you in there, Steve. But he has said it is typical for that borrowing to be paid back in 10 years, that specific amount. But a tax bill would be delineated. So you would see your school taxes, and then you would see the electoral debt. And the reason I know this is because a former superintendent in North Penn School District might own a home in a district where they passed an electoral debt referendum. So it would just be for this purpose, and it would be a separate line item on the bill outlining, okay, over 10 years, you're paying this much back. So it would be separate. You cannot continue to raise it. And I saw another question which really ties to this, Bob. I'm sorry, I know this is your job, but it was, does a yes mean that the board has to go to Act 1 every year? Our financial modeling utilized the average of Act 1 since its inception, which I believe I think the average since 2006 was 2.7%. So we have a couple years here. It's an inflationary index, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a couple years of projections from the state of what that number is going to be. Let's say 3 years. And then they reset it or they update it depending on how things are going. I believe Steve says it's about 2 years behind, okay, the economy. But so we have projections, and we've used some of those projections in general for financial modeling for the next couple years. 2.8, Steve just said. Thanks, Steve. Mm-hmm. However, for the length of our financial modeling, we utilized the average beyond what we already know from the projections from the state. I hope that makes sense. So 2.8% is the average, and that was utilized in our financial modeling. So you do not, let's say something happens, and I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty details, but let's say Act 1 in 2 years is 6.5%. This does not mean we need to go to 6.5%. And we did not model that we will be going to 6.5%. I hope that makes sense, Bob.
Yeah,
really
and I want to get into there's some design questions in here and pieces in the building, but I want to stay on finances for a moment, because the other thing I saw a lot of places is there's no way that yes vote is only 403 because of inflation, because of costs. It's going to be way more than that. So if we can speak to those inflationary pieces we've built into the projections to account for 7 years of construction and the time of the bonds and when they're going to be rolled out. If we can talk about that part, the contingency we built into this estimate, and understanding that we are also well aware that inflation is a thing and interest rates that's a thing, and how that fits into all the projections and how that's accounted for.
All right, ask the question one more time.
Basically, how do we build in, is 403?
Okay.
Are we going to exceed 403 because inflation and because of interest rates? Okay. And is that going to skyrocket past 403? And then we can't do 403 anyway. It's way more than that. So how did we build that into our budget to determine the 403?
Look, we have said time and time again, and it can be misconstrued, misinterpreted, whatever. Let me be abundantly clear that number is the ceiling. We will not, cannot, will not in any way, shape, or form go above that number. We have inflation built into the modeling. We have employee increases built into the modeling, right? All these things, again, construction contingency. Are there going to be unforeseen circumstances? Yeah. Are there going to be, like when we did the NAP project, there were tanks buried underground that we didn't know were there from 70 years ago or whatever it was. Like, these things cost money. That contingency is built in. And if you know Mr. Scrocky at all, he's conservative, very, very fiscally conservative, right? So that's built in. And so the people that say, no way, that's not possible. Look, do things happen in the world, and do economies and markets do unexpected things? Yes. But over the life of, say, a 30-year borrowing, law of averages prevails. And that's all built in. So yes, we account for all of that, Bob. It's accounted for. That's the ceiling. Quite frankly, as we move along here, and we've tried to say, like, hey, that's the top. This is the wish list. When you get down to schematic design, things start to go away. Cut. This is the estimates that are out there are based upon that wish list. That 403 includes everything that we have presented. That number is the number, is the number, is the number. I don't know how to make that any more clear.
So when you say that, the other thing I've seen is, because we've said this before, is that's the number, that's the budget, and that's where we're going to be. So we're going to end up with just a renovated building anyway at 403. The high school won't be reimagined. We won't be expanding hallways. We won't be adding, what we call next generation learning spaces, those kinds of things. So when we talk about cut to get there, some may hear that and go, well, we're not going to get this anyway. And so we're just going to be spending more on the same. So let's talk about like how we've, refined that and what it could mean, because the physical bid documents aren't made yet, and they haven't gone out to bid yet. So we don't have that, but we have a really good estimate based upon our schematic design. And that's what the whole point is on this number. So let's talk about, like you just said, cut. So we're cutting everything out. We're just still stuck with the same old North Penn 1971 high school with some more classrooms attached. What are we talking about?
Yeah. So the estimate, that 403 number, again, as Steve just put in the chat here, 7% construction contingency, 5% design contingency, 4% construction contingency are already included in that number. And again, this is fairly conservative. We do that intentionally to be prudent and fiscally responsible. our objective is to provide what we believe we've heard through 5 years of planning, focus groups, many meetings I wasn't even in because it's not my voice that wants to be heard, right? Stakeholder groups, third-party research firms, visits up and down the East Coast to go visit state-of-the-art facilities. Like, what's important to us? What do we want to see? What don't we want to see? And the estimates were built upon that. If this was not a project of this magnitude, we wouldn't even be talking about it yet, Bob. Right? Like 2 years before NAP, we put a shovel in the ground. We weren't talking about it. We were working behind the scenes and designing because obviously it did not require a referendum, right? We had an Act 34 hearing just before the project commenced to kind of get some input, but we wouldn't be talking about it. This is unique. We need to hear from the community on a direction that we're going. But I can guarantee you that all of these things that we have been talking about, the intention is to incorporate those components into the design themselves. So if those of you who just joined, I don't know how many people are in, Bob, I don't care. That's fine. People may watch later. I've pointed out that in order for us to try to get to as many people's questions as we can, try to limit the number of questions you individually ask. Because I want to, Mr. Patchell, I see you bombarding us here. I want to try to get to each individual. And if we just get flooded with a bunch of comments, we won't be able to do that. So, all right, Bob, fire away. Keep it going.
All right. So the other question is about ninth grade. So the community votes no, and the referendum does not pass. Are we revisiting to move ninth grade here again? I know, legally we can't ask the question again in a referendum. We've got to wait a certain amount of time before we do that. But based upon, let me add this question in there, which gets to why are referendums in January and time. So would we, if this referendum is a no and the community says no come January 16th, is the ninth grade question over, and are we not moving it, and the importance of moving forward? And I'm going to add one more thing, and then I'll recap it for you because I just did 3 things in a row. Another question is the tour on for tonight at 6 p.m. at the high school with Mr. Nicholson. It is, and you will see the water features. The not designed water features for sure tonight when you come into the building. So that is on for tonight. This is the last tour before the referendum, if you'd like to come out and see that. So let me go back to ninth grade. Are we going to revisit moving ninth grade here to the high school in a no vote? Let's just start there.
No.
And why not?
That's the answer. And it goes back to your first question, Bob.
Yep.
What's required at the 3 middle schools? Long-term projections about capital projects and what needs to be done at these middle schools. That 236 number is where it stops, because that difference in between the 403 and the 236 above that 306 number that I've seen floated out there will need to be spent in the middle schools. We can't do a substantive addition for 1,000 students at the high school without a yes. And it's, we can break down tax bills, and this is a burden. It is obviously we're trying to be as transparent as possible about that cost. I don't have the exact number. I'll pull it up at some point, but I know things have changed since the first charts we've put out. It's been adjusted, right? And things have gotten better, and interest rates have dropped a little bit. A lot of projections show that interest rates are going to continue to drop over the next couple years. That's a good thing for a construction project. But the money it's just not possible without going to a referendum again for another project. And I got to be honest with you, we're not going back to this process. This is the moment on Tuesday. Is it important to you for ninth grade to move to the high school? Yes or no? And this is what would need to happen in order to do so. The next answers about what we do at the middle schools, are there 3? Are there 2? What happens in the elementary school? Again, we're talking 10, 12 years down the line, potentially. We can't make that decision right now. It's silly because, for example, this school board won't be here to vote on that 12 years from now. Who knows if this superintendent and this coordinator of communications media will be here 12 years from now, right, Bob? So this is the decision, what that exact design looks like, what this classroom looks like, what this ceiling is, and this or that. That is to be refined over the next 18 months. But we have to decide, we have to have that borrowing capacity to do that now. And without that, we cannot put in a 1,000 student addition, which comes with food service, which comes with gymnasium space, which comes with arts space, we just can't do it without that exception. to Act 1.
Got it. So I want to talk about two of the things I've seen out there, and I think I saw a question here about enrollment and about traffic. There's some things, and again, people are just coming on board now, and they may not have gone to the Reimagine website and seen all the presentations. But tell us, have we studied enrollment, and have we studied traffic impact of what this yes vote would mean to the North End High School campus?
Yes, and yes. So I think it was roughly 14 months ago in November, we presented an enrollment study with the Montgomery County Planning Commission. That was publicly presented. They presented at a work session. It is posted on the Reimagine website. We did an enrollment study. And it is projected that the school district will go up something like 115 students in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. The long-term projection is significantly more, but we've committed to doing another enrollment projection soon, in another year or two. But again, it's even if that number is true, it was about 800 students. That's 800 students across 18 schools, right? So break it down by 800 something divided by 13 grades divided by X number of buildings, and that impact isn't as significant as you might think. Okay, so yes, we did an enrollment study. Yes, we did a traffic study. That was presented at a work session in, I believe, or maybe a facilities and operations meeting, but it is also posted on the Reimagine website, that presentation. We hired a third party to study traffic. This is not something that just came about in the last year. This is something we've been discussing for 4 to 5 years and working through and planning and hiring experts and all those things. So that is all posted.
Gotcha. I've just seen a lot of those questions again. And if you haven't been tuned into those types of things, there's just been so much information, but it is all there on the Reimagine site. I want to talk about design a little bit. And I got to tell you, I've heard this from staff, and because I'm in the communications world here and know the presentations, I feel it a little bit too, as far as the design of the building and get Margaret's comment in here. I think this goes for staff as well. As far as when we get to the actual design that gets bid and sent out, if the yes passes, how are parents involved? I will say this as a staff member. How are staff members involved in the school community? How this is designed? Because I know we've shown a lot of concepts in general, even science. We talk about science and does it have a shared lab or not? Those kinds of things, which haven't been designed or hasn't been designed. It has been budgeted for the space, but it hasn't been designed of how they'll function. How will people be involved in this process once the referendum passes? And frankly, it's the same thing in a no. I don't know if there's that much design to do when you're just fixing HVAC, et cetera, in this building. But how are people involved in the process before it goes out to bid? Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there have been, obviously, years ago, at this point, 21, 22, surveys with Hanover Research and questions about moving ninth grade, which was an overwhelming yes at the time. And we've had staff members from department chairs at the high school and the middle school in each department involved. We've sat down with architects. How many classrooms will you need for math, for example? What will that look like? If ninth grade moved, how many additional classrooms would you need? We looked at the schedules and what would the schedules look like if they combine, all those things, right? So we've had department chairs involved, and they have obviously been involving their departments as well. And that's just to get us to the conceptual stage, right? How many spaces, how many classrooms, how many locker rooms, how many gyms, all those things. That has been the process over the last couple of years. We've looked at square footage. We've consolidated in areas. We've streamlined efficiencies. So that has gotten us to where we are today. In terms of like exact design, where classrooms are, what they look like, where is this elevator located, how are we doing this? What's the cafeteria going to be? Where's the food service? How's it connect to the gym? All those things. That's going to have to be through small focus groups of stakeholders related to that area. Obviously, we'll have science teachers involved when we're looking at science classrooms, and the health and PE department when we're doing that space. Bringing parents in to get their feedback throughout the process. So it's going to have to be a continual process. We work behind the scenes. We look at the nitty gritty and the logistics of it all, but then we get feedback on that plan, whether it's presented in a public meeting or it's in small focus groups brought in to discuss.
Okay. So I was trying to go to some more design questions here to keep it there. Obviously, there's a lot of tax questions, and we definitely want to be answering those as well. I just don't want to get all into the tax pieces here. Folks saying, there's two things of the value of this referendum and the reimagining of North Penn High School and right-sizing this building and all the things we've talked about. I don't have any kids at all. My kids didn't even go through. I don't have kids. What's the value to me? And then others that say, well, my kids are in middle school. There's no value there either. It's really going to be kindergarten, first grade, second grade students that will see a reimagined high school. So why should I even vote for this? And what's the value to me as a resident that doesn't have kids and not in the school system?
Right. So the study I've been referencing in the meetings, Bob, out of Yale, have mentioned the impact on not only student achievement, but also a significant impact on home value, right? It benefits the school district and the community to have a great high school facility. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. And did you post that study to the website? Do you know?
It's on there.
Okay. All right. So the increases, and it's really broken down and disaggregated by the types of renovations or borrowings. So whether it's HVAC systems, whether it's athletic fields, whether it's classroom spaces, whatever it is, and what that impact is on the home. When you have a state-of-the-art facility, people want to live there because they want their children to go to school there. Someone reached out to me recently and said they visited another local high school that is pretty state-of-the-art, just opened this year. And they said, when they were leaving, that their children asked, why can't we go here for school? Like that's the value to the home owner, whether you have children here or not. The property values do go up. There's no doubt about it. That said, we've heard from local business owners, and large business owners in this community. Hey, if our school is a state-of-the-art facility and people want to attend it, that's good for us. That's good for our business. That's good for recruitment purposes. So having an excellent, exceptional program is important, but having a great facility is obviously important too. And having the facility that cannot, and again, Bob, you keep emphasizing this. We're not just talking about 2023.
No.
It's generational. Like we're talking 40 years from now, because we have 18 schools and we're not coming back around to North Penn High School in my lifetime. I would love to live to be 100, but I don't think we're coming back to North Penn High School in my lifetime. So this is our decision now. That's before us. Yes or no. And there will be many, many more decisions moving forward as we design, but we need to determine whether or not 9th is moving.
Great. So the other thing I was seeing out there, and there was a line, I don't know if I saw it on a post somewhere, about we need to create a brand new curriculum to meet the buildings. Like if we're doing like collaborative spaces and different things, we need a brand new curriculum. And one of the things I think there's a misnomer in talking about, like when we talk about these collaboration spaces and we have an open commons area for the CAF and those kinds of things, that there are no traditional classrooms anymore. That we don't have classrooms, and we still have classrooms and desks and where people sit. So let's just talk about what collaboration spaces mean. And maybe people are hearing too much of that and not realizing there are classrooms in this building and how that'll look. And what's that mean for the teacher? Do they have to learn how to teach all over again to do these types of things?
Yeah, this one kind of made me smirk, Bob. And it's really, I don't know how to say it nicely. It's a uninformed perspective. A curriculum is not how to teach. A curriculum is what are the objectives? What skills do we want children to have? Right? So the curriculum doesn't necessarily change because the classroom space changes. Right? So the state, the core standards, the PDE state standards in certain subjects, that's not changing tomorrow. Right? Does it evolve? Of course it does. That's not changing. So the curriculum does not change. Our opportunities for teaching may. How we teach, what we do, what activities. Another analogy, let's use sports, Bob. Let's use football because the NFL playoffs are on the horizon, and I'm sure the Eagles will be out in one game. The objective is to score points and to score more points than the other team. That's the objective. That's the curriculum. How you go about doing that, obviously, is the art of teaching in many cases. So the curriculum doesn't necessarily change because the space changes. Your opportunities and what you can afford for kids can evolve. We also want to design a space when you talk about collaborative, flexible spaces. When we say flexible, we literally mean flexible, meaning we need to have that room to change and adjust as time goes by. So I don't know what a classroom looks like in 2035, 2045, or 55. I do know that when you're embarking upon a renovation project of a 550,000 square foot building, whether that gets bigger or not, we need to try to be future planning and future centered, and offering ourselves as much flexibility as we can.
Yeah. And you just answered one of the questions that came up, like, how do we know in 25, 30 years what we need? And I've said it, well, we know what 1971 is, and that's what we have right now, and it's not working well, right? The collaboration spaces we have now is the hallway. So I've shown videos, and there's pictures when we do our different videos of showing how do we collaborate. Well, it's usually sitting on the floor outside the classroom, and teacher has a tough time seeing out the door to see what's going on out that door too, right? So even in a no vote, we are still going to have the same type of building around for 20, 30 years. So if the no vote, renovating the North Penn High School section or the North Penn High School proper piece and making it up to date as far as HVAC, et cetera, is also going to be the same thing for the next 20, 30 years. I mean, you kind of just said the same thing. So if we're renovating, yes, no, how do we know 25 years from now what education is going to look like? I think if we knew that, actually, we'd have a pretty good consulting business, though, right? But we don't. I want to talk about, I've seen this a couple different places about children with disabilities and sensory spaces. And our former mayor of North Penn, Ben Hartranft, had put some stories in there about schools being 100% accessible and our sensory spaces for students with disabilities. How are we accounting for that in the reimagined site, and what's that look like in a no of refurbing the old building? What does that look like, and what are the possibilities between the two?
Yeah. So some of the things we've spoken to in previous meetings, Bob, include spaces that we saw in other schools, right? I'll speak specifically to a post-12 space that we saw in Falls Church. There was a area of the building, but as soon as you walked through a threshold, it was a completely different space, right? It was right now we do have an amazing opportunity for our students down in the PDC, which is in the basement of Penndale, but it is not in our high school. It's an apartment and long-term living type of opportunity for kids to learn how to cook and to make a bed and to do household things, right? We went into a school where they actually had a wing of their building that looked like this. It wood floors as opposed to a regular school floor. It made it feel like a home. You walked in and it felt like an apartment, a true apartment within the school, right? So that is programming and building spaces for students to meet those needs. We certainly recognize, and obviously special education department and parents will be involved in design of such spaces. Teachers would be involved. Current research and best practices would help to guide those things as we develop these plans and schematic designs. But I can't point specifically. I don't know what the average math classroom looks like right now. I don't know what that chemistry lab is going to look like. We will. And some of the things that we saw, and Ben speaks about the sensory rooms. I know he's an advocate. He was down with the mayor the other day in a partnership that Mayor Kenny in Philadelphia was highlighting. All things we look to explore as we move forward. And obviously our opportunities are broader and wider if with a yes vote than with a no. But regardless, it's my job and our job to try to provide what our students need in a yes or a no, and move forward next Tuesday, one way or the other. That's my goal. So yes, there's more flexibility, whether it's financial, space, whatever it is, beyond next Tuesday with a yes. That doesn't mean we won't still have many of the same objectives.
So I want to bring in Phil Hunt here. So he's asking about safety. We've heard about this too, safety concerns with the building, bringing ninth grade into the high school, onto the high school campus. We've talked about safety and security before because we've seen all kinds of potential building concepts, people worried about windows and open spaces, those types of things. Let's talk about safety. Let's talk about security in the modern era here, and what we will be doing to improve that and accounting for, ninth grade being here on the campus. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, Phil, I hope you're doing well. Good to hear from you. So this is every superintendent and perhaps every educator's least favorite topic to speak to, right? It's such a shame that we have to talk about the worst case scenario, but it is the responsible thing to do in 2023. So we have absolutely moved away from, let's say, the late 90s and early 2000s, where it was all about hiding and taking shelter. Sometimes that's necessary, but a lot of the Alice method and the current research on school safety is all about run, hide, fight, and a lot of egress, right? So getting out, giving people opportunities to leave, to isolate challenges. I have seen renderings and I have heard the comments, Bob, that like too much glass. Look, do I think there should be glass? Do I think there should be more natural light, more transparency? Yes. Do I believe it needs to be all the things that you are seeing in these images? No, I don't. These are just renderings. But the objective is to control visitor management, badging, access to spaces, right? Right now in North Penn High School, Bob, give me a guess how many keys are on your key ring.
Oh, this is just for the things I do.
Right. Right. So look at that.
Yeah.
The challenges at North Penn High School with keying. If everything was badging, if you had a substitute come in for the day, oh, you're filling in for this person, boop, we program a badge for you that gives you access to the right spaces, to open, to lock, to do whatever in that space. Those types of things are absolutely pivotal today. Transparency, being able to see what's going on. Our cafeteria right now, there are 4 different cafes, right? You got the senior caf, you got the cookie corner, you got the main caf, you got the bus loop caf. They're all disjointed and there's all kinds of angles and you can't see and there could be this going on over there. It's about having surveillance, being able to see, not having these places for students to hide, and having access to get out if you need to. That doesn't mean be irresponsible. Yes, we would like to have more outdoor learning spaces, but enclosed outdoor learning space. That doesn't mean inside, internal. It means internal environmental exposure. Yeah, sure. Courtyards. Sure. And giving us the opportunity to shut down areas or classrooms or lock classrooms where there is someone with nefarious intentions, and isolate them in that space. That's the whole objective here. It is
and if you can talk to the differences between no and yes on that, because for sure we will have badge access opportunities in a no vote. We'll have those kinds of opportunities, but we're not, again, changing the flow of this building or structure. So those differences in a yes in security and the differences in no. I mean, no is, we can say, right? For sure we'd have badging in different pieces, but what are the differences between no and yes when we talk security? And you've talked to it. I just want to be specific about it.
Yeah. So there's a lot about campus flow that helps to maintain security, right? Allowing for surveillance from your staff, from your security team, accessibility from emergency responders, wayfinding and circulation around the campus. That's all important. Those issues, Bob, you brilliantly pulled that clip from 1996 when Dr. Juan Bonds was sitting and held up a map in a school board meeting and pointed to these circulation problems in 1996 and demanding that the building has work done. It still has not. Those issues have not been adjusted. The student population has not gone down, right? That is not for the reasons. And if you didn't start with us, we're 48 minutes in. If you didn't start with us in the beginning, we addressed why all these changes in the footprint, that it's just not feasible because of the infrastructure needs of the district as a whole. Without a yes vote here. So that's where we are. And it's just where we are. I can't speak to it. I can't speak to decisions that were made in the past. And I am sure they were made with the best of intentions and with the most information we had at the time, but things have changed. And it's just, we can't make all these changes and do what we need to at the middle school without that financial flexibility.
And this goes back to, we've been talking about ninth grade all the way back with Dr. Dietrich and 16 or 17 there, where we're talking about snugly attached ninth grade center. And I want to talk about, when we first said, like, what's possible if we looked at this, what could it be? Yeah. And we gave some basic numbers back in 2016 at the first community forum. And that's before we did NAP and other things. And we're looking at that to talk about how the numbers have changed over time. And saying, why is this 403 now? It wasn't 403 5 years ago. Inflation. But let's talk about, when we went through the design piece, because initially we're talking about a completely separate ninth grade center as part of this. And that changed over time with feedback from residents and parents and students and staff. And we talked about what would be best for kids. So the numbers that were presented on this is what we think it would be, to what they are today. Why has that changed? I've seen a lot of that. Like, this was 5 years ago, this amount. Why is it so much more today? What's the thing that's happened over that time, over the last 5 years?
All right. So there's a lot there to unpack. You gave me a lot. So I do want to address the snugly attached and the ninth grade building itself. First of all, I saw something circulating recently that said the ninth grade building was going to be on the WMPV property. That's not true. That was never, ever stated. That was, speaking of Phil, that was a property that's adjacent to ours. We were approached about the property, and it was like, you know what? Maybe one day, athletic fields, parking, whatever it may be. When we were talking about a separate building, Kurt Dietrich used to say snugly attached, really close adjacent. But as we've gone through these meetings, and that we were moving forward with that concept, like a close proximity. But we have these large scale meetings with 100 and X people, and students, business owners, community members, parents, staff members. And, it just kept coming through. Like, look, if you're going to bring the ninth graders, let them be high schoolers. Let them don't put them on this separate island. Fully integrate them into the world that is high school. So that's one thing that has evolved since the beginning. That was not the intention initially. But it was loud and clear in every single meeting, from parents to staff to kids. That's like Anna Weatherwax in the one meeting stood up and held a microphone, and she said something like, it's like bringing a dog to a fence and putting a squirrel on the other side, I think was the analogy she drew, which was really funny. But bringing the ninth graders and not giving them access to all those things, that has evolved. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part, Bob, was, remind me.
So it's just the cost differential between what we were looking at back in the beginning when we first started saying this is possible. What could it look like? What would it look like? And to the numbers that are being used today to go into referendum.
Yeah. So there is we'll have to post it after, Bob. I don't remember exactly the meeting. Steve, I know you're watching. You may know. There was a meeting where Mr. Schrader and Mr. Scrocky in particular went through in great detail how the numbers have evolved since. So the initial number was just to renovate North Penn High School. And then there was obviously the cost of adding ninth grade. It did not include all the site costs. We did not have the WMPV property at that time. So site costs have changed. It did not include moving transportation at the time back then. So there are a lot of layers to the project that have evolved throughout these 4 to 5 years of planning. And then throw in the inflation. I mean, construction costs have never risen so dramatically in a short period of time. But obviously history tells us that costs don't go down. It's not getting cheaper. The inflationary index may slow and the rise may slow, but things are not what today is $400 million is not going to be $300 million tomorrow. That's not how that works in construction. So there's a hour plus meeting where all of that is explained in great detail, line by line.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically what meeting that was too, but it's definitely those meetings are also on the Reimagine site. I have to look at exactly which one that was. All right, so we'll go back to taxes here in a second. I want to talk about reassessment. The other thing I said is, what if the county reassesses? And we've talked about this before. And understanding that, I'll use my house as an example. I don't even know what Zillow has it for today. The market value of that is like $450,000 or so. And my assessed value of my home is $160,000. And that was determined in 1998 when they reassessed when they reassessed all the properties in Montgomery County. So what happens if the county decides to reassess? What's that mean for our budget? What's that mean for the taxpayer? We talked about this last time, but I want to just reiterate that and talk about what happens if a reassessment were to happen, and does it look like it's on any kind of horizon at this time?
Okay, so the answer to that latter question is no. To our knowledge, there is no reassessment coming. The ultimate point, though, being Steve spoke to the common level ratio, right? So you take what it's supposed to do is take your assessed value and convert it utilizing the common level ratio into a implied market value. Okay. So a reassessment does not all of a sudden, unless your home is improperly assessed, does not all of a sudden dramatically change a homeowner's taxes. It right sizes those taxes relative to other homes in the county and in your school district, for example. So let's use the number $320 million for an annual budget for the North Penn School District. If there was a reassessment right now, the money coming into the school district from real estate taxes would not all of a sudden be $400 million. It would still be that number. It's just how your home, Bob, is assessed as a resident in the North Penn School District relative to others might adjust a little bit, but ultimately, and then of course that common level ratio adjusts as well, because the difference between your assessed value and your implied market value, in theory, right now, if your assessment came out right now, that ratio would be 1, right? Because what it's assessed at is what it's valued at. But years from now, the discrepancy between your assessment and your market value, there's a difference. So that common level ratio makes up for that difference. And that establishes your real estate taxes.
Yeah, I think that's what's key is recalculating those numbers of what happens in a reassessment. It does not mean all of a sudden there's a windfall for any of the municipalities or the school district. A mill gets recalculated, basically, right?
That's correct.
So we're going to talk about homeowner impact and taxes here. One of the things we've shared, and again, this chart is on the Reimagine website, when we talk about what the average annual cost is between a yes vote and a no vote. And we have it for 100, 150, and 300 assessed value, and then it shows what the implied market value here. And I've kind of been using the middle category here as assessed value at 150 and the implied market value at 423,000. So in the yes vote, we have up here for you to see, it's an average annual cost, average over time, of $244. And the no vote is $73 over time. So that's over time. But one of the things, that I've seen out here is saying then, okay, does that mean every year my taxes are going up $244 in a yes vote? And the reality is it rolls out over time. And over time, over the 32 years with the yes vote, that is averaged over those 32 years. And Steve can correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the things, that I look at is there are 4 tax increases above due to the referendum, due to this yes vote. And the way I see it, in 2026, that's a $48 increase for that year. In 2029, it'll be $65. In 2030, it'll be $129. And then 2031, it'll be $75. So there's 4 tax increases. Now, it doesn't mean it's 48 and it goes away, 65 and it goes away, 129 and it goes away, and then 75 it goes away. It is cumulative. But those are the 4 increases on an average home of $423,000. And that's what we're talking about. So there's not a tax increase every single year because of this. It is cumulative over time. And then it starts to go down towards that end of that 32 because those bonds roll off. Can we keep that referendum tax increase forever? And once this goes up to that 244 over time, can it stay there and will it be there forever? Because we all know that, once you put a tax in place, it never goes away, right? So what happens with this referendum amount, those 4 tax increases that would be due to the referendum? What happens at the end of that?
Right. So let's be clear that the referendum is only for a portion of it, though, right? So as I said, the real estate tax will show up with a line item of electoral debt. What's the cost to you this year for that? So that number, Bob, for the average assessed value in the North Penn School District, and again, I see ridiculous comments, people who are making things up. This is not like, oh, we think this is the average. This is like statistically the average, right? The average assessed home in the school district, if today that tax bill is $4,445, okay? The maximum as a result of this project, not just for the referendum, the maximum for this project is $4,764. Right. And that comes into play I have the chart up here, in year 2030. And it sits at that number until 2050, 20 years. And then it starts to go down because it's not just the referendum borrowing, it's the entire project that's in there. But that debt falls off of the real estate, just like right now, right? So in the last 10 years, we've touched Montgomery, Hatfield, Knapp,
Inglewood.
Yeah, that was probably That was outside of 10. I'm going to say Hatfield, Montgomery, and Knapp. For that we had borrowings for.
Sure.
Right. And those monies start to fall off. You have debt service in your budget to pay for debt when you borrow money to do projects like this. So I hope, Steve, I did it some justice there for you. But that's the impact. There are 4 increments. If today that individual's bill is $4,445, excuse me, in 2026, that bill would go up $48.
Mm-hmm.
In 29, it would go up 65 more for a cumulative value of $114 from today. And then it would go up another 129 and then 75 and sit there. So for an increase from today's dollars in 2030 of $319.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I am not speaking of the difference right now. I'm speaking of the cost, the total. Mm-hmm. We're not comparing yes versus no. That's a yes example of what the impact would be. And again, outlined in the presentation, put up on the screen, shared on the website. Please feel free to look at it. This is a true modeling for the average homeowner through the year 2055.
Excellent. Mr. Scrocky did put in there, it was the July 31st facilities meeting when we went through the cost and the differential from so many years ago to now. And I'll drop that here in the chat when we're done. So we're over an hour here. We're an hour 5 now, Dr. Bauer.
I need to keep going.
Okay, we can keep going.
If you're okay, I mean, people are still engaging. I'm happy to answer more. Gosh, I have to go all the way to the bottom because we certainly didn't get to everything. But we
did not get to everything. That's for sure. Let me ask this. I don't know that we actually said this. We talked about the referendum in January. And since it's been an hour, I apologize if we did answer this, but it'll be good for everybody watching right now. So why didn't we do this in November? If it saves us money per every month that we haven't made a decision, the sooner we make the decision, the sooner we start deciding it's yes, it's no, we move forward. Why didn't the referendum happen in November? And why is January the referendum and not the primary? Because there are expenses associated to a January referendum. So why not November? And why couldn't it be April?
Okay. So, one, the statute says that if you're going to do a special election, it has to be 60 days after and 90 days before a general or primary. That's why the date. And we tried to follow the statute to the letter of the law. So we chose a Tuesday. Inside of that window, 60 after, 90 before. I think I got that right. I might have switched them. Sorry, Bob. I'm going off the cuff here. We picked a Tuesday because election day is usually Tuesday, right? So that's why it had to be 60 days after November, 90 days before the primary in April. I think it's still April, right? There was conversation that it was going to move to March in Pennsylvania, but it's April. That's where we are. And you have to advertise at certain times and put it out there, put it in the newspaper, put it in the journals, put it in, like, all those things have been followed. The true estimate was not ready those 90 days before November, right? Where the board would need to take action. It was not, and 90, you do the math. We're talking beginning of August. No, those estimates, we didn't hire an engineering firm, July?
Correct.
Where they started putting together the line by line detailed estimate. And I'll tell you what, it was Herculean what they did in getting these estimates prepared. So I think we hired them in July. Obviously, months of research and design and conversation and estimating and refine until they actually had a number. So then the question becomes, all right, if November is not possible, do you wait till the primary in April? And we've been talking about the inflationary costs of construction. And it is just not responsible. Even if it's a no, there is cost savings there. Mm-hmm. Because if we waited till April for the no, there's still time, and time is money, especially when you're talking a project of this magnitude. I recognize that it is kind of counter to our intuition, but it is the honest to goodness truth that time, look what has happened since 2017-18 until today. The costs have just absolutely snowballed. So that's why we're here now. I know, and now's a good time to talk about this, Bob. I know that there is forecasted weather right now. I am going to hope that, as per usual, that is wrong. That is not going to happen. I've seen conflicting reports. You and I were actually talking about creating a rider service, like a
Sure.
driver service. Like Bob and I will be Ubers and we'll get volunteers out to drive people if necessary. I'm hopeful that is not necessary. I also want to address Bob's school.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, there is school that day. There will be increased security and administrators at every location. We've communicated with our local police departments about being present as well. There will be adults in between where community members are entering to vote and access to children. So, for example, I'm going to pick York Avenue, for example. The entrance for where people will enter to vote is different. It's going to be on the side over there by the playground. They will not be entering at the main entrance because they're voting in the library, right? There are other schools where they're voting in the gym. We will have adults stationed to supervise that process throughout the day. Obviously, all of the volunteers from the Board of Elections will be raptored in. We will have them swiped in. We'll have documentation of them being there, of the volunteers themselves, and then the voters. If somebody needed to use the restroom, they would be escorted. So there have been questions. What if there is weather that day? Let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that there's not. That whether or not the election is canceled or postponed is not up to us. That's up to the county. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing outside of a state of emergency, it's not likely. Power outages, massive snowstorm, that kind of thing.
That goes the same thing for the poll workers and everybody that works for the county. That's the job that day, to get there and open and have the polling place open. Yes. The other thing I think, and I'm just thinking about, if I'm used to going to York Avenue and I walk up the steps, I don't know if they usually enter the main entrance, and you get there, is that all of these polling places are the same. So for whatever reason, if you walk up to the school and you don't see any signs, ask, where's the entrance to the polling place? Yeah. So all of the normal polling places that are always open in a general election and a primary are the same for this election. So yes. If it's in a slightly different location, signage will be out there to direct you to the right place. But if you're unsure, just simply ask, because we will get you to the right spot to make sure you can get there and vote. There is no reason to walk away from a polling place because you don't know which door to go into.
Yes, right? We have signage purchased. We have individuals out there. We will make it abundantly clear where your voting location in terms of the site itself is the exact same. However, the place at that location could change. Not many. Mm-hmm. In most cases, it's not changing. But in some of every school in the district is a voting location aside from one. And there's just a couple where it actually moves the place. So, for example, if it's the gym, we're not having PE classes in the gym that day. We are not having outdoor recess that day. First of all, I think it's going to be pretty cold. Second of all, we're going to utilize playgrounds for parking in many cases. So we are taking measures. We're adding supervision and administrators. I'm stationed at one of our buildings all day. And I'm going to be sitting there and greeting people. I am not allowed in this space where they're voting, but I will provide supervision in an area where the doors are to the school from where the voting location is.
And with our security and extra help, like I said, there'll be people there to help you get to the right spot. Yes. Everybody's there to help. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. All right. So I think I've gotten through most of my questions. I have one more, and it's kind of popped up here in the chat a little bit in different ways. But, there's some recommendations of saying do different things with the middle schools, make Penndale a second high school, buy the Montgomery Mall, make that a second high school, or the primary high school, close this one. Any number of the iterations between what we currently have on the ballot for a yes reimagined high school and a renovation of no in the no vote. Talk to me about like all the other options that people are saying like we could do in between. How do we settle on saying with ninth grade and reimagining, like the 5-year process here? Why did it get to this, and why isn't it more options? Or can we talk about more options and talk to us about like decision points that we make here to get here?
Yeah, so certainly other things have been discussed, and we've talked about them publicly, right? So the one option that people have thrown out there a lot is a second high school, right? And right off the bat, based upon the square footage that would be necessary to have X number of students, having a gym, having a pool, having a stadium, having tennis courts and this and that, and all these things that would be necessary for another high school. The estimated cost being $500 million plus still renovating the current building, right? Not happening, right? So that 236 plus 500. If right now, if 97 is on the ballot, imagine plus 500 being on the ballot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just not happening. So some of those iterations have been discussed. Could what the renderings that you see from the concepts, could those change? Yeah. Yes, Bob, they can change. So we have said, like, this is what we've heard for the wish list. This is what we want, and this is what the estimates were based upon. Could things change throughout? Yes. In a no vote, what do we get? All a refurbished building, new floors, new windows, new systems, new paint, windows that open, all those things. It will look new. The 1971 building will look new and feel new and function new. It will not change the spaces themselves. That's the issue. And it will not change the campus circulation. We do a very nice job right now, right? I mean, our high school is a great high school, and we provide a great experience for students. And can we function 10 to 12? Yes. Is that what is desired by the community? We'll find out on Tuesday. But with that, once we make that decision, then other decisions will be able to fall in place. I did see the question in here, why are we having school on that day, Bob? Because when the calendar was approved last January, we did not know that we would be
having a referendum then, that's for sure.
Yeah, we did not have a referendum. We did not have a date. So school's on the calendar. So it is on the calendar. If we have inclement weather, keep in mind the only staff members who would need to vote are residents of the district, and hopefully they would have to vote at a location near them. When in doubt, perhaps an absentee ballot, and drop it off at your polling place. All that information is posted online. But let's hope for no weather challenges. Our facilities crew will be totally out and about and trying to keep things clear as best they can. And Bob, I know you and I in particular will be out there pushing shovels if we have to.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful that this will not come to fruition. It's still a week away. A lot can change in a week, but I'm hopeful that we will not have weather that day.
Gotcha. I think I'm going to try to do a little bit of lightning here.
Oh,
I want to hit. We got a lot of things in here we didn't exactly address.
Bob, I'm going to stand up for that. Hold on.
Here he goes. While he's rising up for the lightning round here, just a reminder, January 16th, next Tuesday, January 16th, polls will be open at 7 a.m. to vote in the North Penn High School referendum to determine whether or not we finance bringing ninth grade here and the construction necessary to bring ninth grade to North Penn High School and Reimagine, or decide not to do that. It's a yes and no. The ballot is one item, and it is that question. I've said all along, the most important thing for people to know is what a no is and what a yes is. And when you walk in that booth, that you know you're voting on the future of North Penn School District and how we're going to do things for the next 30 years. How to do things in my lifetime, that's for sure. And I intend, though, you said you wouldn't live to 100. I intend to live to be 107. So, all right, I'm going to try to do my best on lightning. Here we go. Address the auditorium seating and bleachers in the gym. Are they getting addressed in a no vote and a yes vote? Are they both the same?
Bleachers, ADA accessibility, yes.
Okay. If the vote is no, can we bring ninth grade to North Penn High School, even outside of the 60 days? Like, the community voted no on bringing ninth grade. Can we still just bring ninth grade and figure out a different way to do it?
No.
Okay.
And we would not wait the required 6 months to run another special election, because time is valuable. And those who have toured this building know, like, it's got to get done one way or the other. And let's decide on Tuesday. Yes or no?
Yeah, and I've seen that too. Why don't we just wait and figure out more options? We've been talking for 5+ years. And if you look at 1996, we've been talking for 30 years about this. All right. So I don't know if this is accurate or not. So Steve could probably answer it. Some folks are saying, is it fair to say that a yes vote means an average taxpayer will pay about $14 a month more in taxes than a no vote? I think that's a Steve answer, if that's accurate or not. I don't have time to do the math here. It's accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, if you take the average cost difference per year, the average annual cost difference between a yes and a no, divided by 12, it is $14 and change.
Great.
Someone else had to put out there like per day, it's less than 50 cents. Look,
Got it.
I don't like to look at it like that. I like to because when I pay my real estate taxes, when I look at my
Not
tax,
$14.
right, it's not 14. I look at the year.
Yes.
How much is it going to cost? And that's the number we've put out there because I get a bill. Steve put in there, yes, North Penn has the 5th lowest tax rate in Montgomery County, 15% below the average. Someone at one point, Bob, someone was taking shots at me, like, where does he live?
Sure.
The tax rate in my school district is a little different than North Penn, and it is not in the bottom 5 in the county. I'll tell you that.
Well, maybe Steve could drop in there. I don't know if we've calculated. If we project out, will we still be the 5th lowest? Are we number 1? And I'm going to guess it's not number 1. But where we'd be in the county after a yes vote, is it astronomically different in the county comparatively to other districts?
I think it's responsible to say that that would go up. It does cost money to do something like this, but we can't predict what other school districts are doing and their borrowings and what they're doing with their tax rate over the years. So now I don't think it would be responsible to even guess. If you said to Steve, if you had to guess, he said, I don't have to guess. That's his response. He wouldn't guess.
What he does. He doesn't guess.
Yeah.
All right. So Mr. Patchell, he has a question about electrical system and transformers and all those pieces. Are we accounting for all those other pieces that require upgrades in a new modern construction? Are all those pieces included and the demands of what we need for this building, electrical wise, or I'm going to go any system like that?
So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Patchell was an electrician, a union electrician, I believe. Right, Mr. Patchell. And so that is his vocation and his area of expertise. I can't talk that talk with him. Mr. Schneider, however, could. I can tell you this. The main power source to North Penn High School goes from Sumney Town Pike directly through our varsity and junior varsity baseball fields. I do know that will need to be torn up and the infrastructure would need to change.
In either scenario.
In either. Obviously, the capacity being significantly more if you move 1,000 more students to the campus. Keep going.
Gotcha. So does Act 1 allow for exceptions for new buildings if a no vote would pass? So can you exceed and do an exception for construction outside of Act 1 and ask for an exception to build a building?
Under an electoral debt referendum, yes.
No. Okay. But Act 1 by itself, you can't say we're applying to the state for an exception to do this instead of a referendum. Which I'll go back. The referendum, we've said this, Steve has said this, the board has said this, you have said this, lots of people have said this. This is a community decision. And the board has put this out to the community to say, where do you want to go? Which way? This is such a monumental decision. I guess if it even were possible, do you know what I mean? This is a very democratic way for our community. Again, please vote to go out there and decide which direction we're going here. All right. I don't understand this question.
I see again, Steve just answered. Is the tour on for tonight at 6:00? Yes, yes, and yes. Bob did say tongue in cheek, but it's the truth that the water feature will be in full effect. We have areas of the building that leak significantly, in particular in K-Pod, down the main concourse and up on the bridge on the 2nd floor. I'm sure you'll see water coming in the building tonight. So yes, that is on after school activities in North Penn. I know neighboring school districts have closed or canceled for after school activities. We are not doing that here in North Penn. So we will have the tour tonight.
Gotcha. I'm not sure. Somebody's just asking for a sample tax bill to show the increases for 5 years. I don't know if we have that, if that's something, I mean, we could look at the average there to post and look at those average over 5 years. I don't know that we have that out there exactly. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have that. Yeah.
That slide I was referencing, Bob, I think would achieve that objective. I don't know if you haven't watched every meeting, which I certainly don't expect everyone to watch every meeting. That one slide for the average example and how much each year, I think putting that prominently would be a good thing.
I will find which presentation it was and we'll get that out there. So that's been done. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. What about other expenses? We have things when we talk about taxes. There are teacher contracts, there's support staff contracts. There's also the need with a bigger building to have more staff. Have we accounted for that in the business of reimagining North Penn High School in our budget to say, like, we know there are other costs associated that's outside of construction. We will have labor contracts. We will have the need for staff to staff this building. Have we accounted for that? What's that look like for us when we've done our planning?
Yes. I mean,
I don't know. That's a good rapid. I was going to say, like, that's not a quick yes, no, but
it's yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
All right.
One thing, Bob, that I think, one thing that's important is I've said quite often that when you bring all your resources together, obviously you can streamline and be more efficient. So the objective is not, and some people have said, well, now all of a sudden you have all the ninth grade teachers together. Well, is the objective to reduce staff? No, that is not the objective. Quite frankly, hopefully it will streamline and make our schedule more efficient. Class sizes there'll be less variation. If you want to talk statistics here, less variation in class size, more options for kids, easier scheduling, and it will streamline all of that. Class size could come down as a result because you have more teachers teaching the same classes. That would be the objective there, and more resources in other areas as a result.
Simple question. Would our badging system happen with option 2, the no?
I would expect that our locking system on doors would be a technology, upgraded, and a technology solution in either yes or no. I think there are some features, this obviously speaking directly to security, some features in a yes that would not be able to be incorporated because certainly the building isn't designed in that way. But I think the badging and visitor management and doors in classrooms would be the same.
Somebody just asking, and we talked about this before just a little bit, the first students to take advantage of the renovations that begin here. So we have a projected first class in second grade?
Yeah,
so fully 9 through 12. When do people start taking advantage of this?
Yeah, the projection right now is this year's second grade would be the first ninth grade class to come up to the high school. That does not mean students between now and then wouldn't have any advantages or benefit from the construction, right? It would, the addition would come first. So students in, say, 8th grade would get to experience the additions because the additions are projected to end in 27, 28. So a couple years from now, as an example.
Gotcha. I do want to see if I can get this out of here. There is some spam in our thing. Don't ever click on links for any football games or basketball games. Somebody spammed us already for a basketball game. Don't click on that. That is not a basketball game. That is happening tonight for sure. And the link is definitely from spammers. So I'll get rid of that after we're done. Let's go here. People asking about the safety plan. We talked about that at each of our buildings that have been shared with our parents on what's going on there. Yes, the high school tour is still on. I'm just quickly scrolling through. I should have more been ready for a lightning here. And somebody asking if the tour requires being on a list. You do not. Just show up here at 6 p.m. and you can do the tour with Mr. Nicholson for sure. We expect a big crowd tonight, even with the weather. This is the last shot. We've been doing this all fall. I forget how many tours we've done. It's 20 plus and custom tours and different tours and our community forum tours. So this is the last one before the referendum, and we will accommodate all who show up tonight at 6.
So now's an opportunity, like Bob, since we're doing this, and it's our kind of last hurrah here, like, let's take the gloves off. And some of these comments in here, feel free to throw it out there. I'm not going to hide behind anything. Ask.
I'll go back and look because I didn't know it was relevant to the conversation. How many administrators live in the school district?
I have no idea. It is not a requirement. Bob does.
I do.
I can think of quite a few who some of our elementary principals do. Some of our assistant principals do. So yeah, there are, not all. I do not. I live in a neighboring district. But yeah, we don't all. That's not a requirement.
I'm going to go back and there's some things I just saw another, like NPSD will be in the top 10 in 12 years. Make it so. So we talk about rankings and those kinds of things all the time and talk about our plan. I've seen that, and there's the niche rankings, and there's all kinds of rankings and all kinds of stuff. Let's talk about our rankings and where we're at academically and how we're judged by things like U.S. World News and niche and those kinds of things. And what's that mean?
Yeah, so you really have to unpack and peel back the layers of an onion when you talk about these things, Bob. And I did it in a recent meeting. Again, we would have to pull that meeting. But it's important to see what's being measured. So, for example, one of the major categories that is utilized in some of these rankings, I won't name specific organizations, is number of AP courses taken and the percentage of students who get a 3 to 5 on that exam. Well, someone who pays attention to what we're doing knows that we have increased the dual enrollment opportunities for kids by about 500% over the last couple of years. And as a result, students, rather than taking AP classes, might be taking classes at a local university. Well, that hurts that score because it's a student not taking an AP exam. So it's really driven by our objectives and our priorities as opposed to a silly ranking that's objective, subjective in some areas. And so that is one of the number one things. Graduation rate. Well, our graduation rate is nearly 99%. But the number of students taking AP classes, has that dropped? Yeah. Has the number of dual enrollment individuals gone up? Oh, look at that thumbs up there. It's gone up astronomically because of the course offerings that have changed over the years. So just an example of certain things. And then you might look at the 7th grade PSSA, right? And across the state, I think the proficiency rate in the 7th grade PSSA is something like 20%. Which really makes you question the test itself. And I'm not making excuses, but we have a large percentage of our students who take pre-algebra or algebra. That is not the content that's on the 7th grade PSSA. So you might be taking algebra in 7th grade and you're getting tested on concepts that you learned a couple years ago. And again, it's you really have to peel it back and take a look at it. What I will tell you this is we're in the top 10% in the state. Our district is in some rankings in the top 5% in the state. It's to me, it's really about the education. Are kids prepared for future ready? Are they prepared to move on and achieve their goals? Are they prepared for college? A ranking is a ranking, and I'd be happy to debate that any day.
Gotcha. So we talked about teacher contracts, support staff contracts. Are all our contracts settled? Our teacher contracts up at the end of this year, I believe. Where are we at? What's going on with those things?
Yeah, so our support staff, we refer to that as NESPA, the North Penn Educational Support Professionals Association, NESPA. That is up next year, our Act 93 agreement. And when I say next year, I mean 25. That is up in 25, I believe, Bob. And our teacher contract is up this year. And you're required by law to start contract discussions in January, which they have begun. They actually began quite a while ago in an attempt to have some early bird discussions to try to make progress. I've said publicly that those conversations are going well, but those are also in our projections, Bob. And I do want to encourage, looking at some of these comments, and I appreciate those who put thoughtful comments in and really ask good, hard questions with a knowledge base. But for individuals that are trying to take shots or say things, reach out. Please have the courage to make a phone call. I will talk to you. I will sit. You can come and sit in my office right here, and we'll sit down and talk about it and explain everything. To say something like hiding money, it is truly irresponsible. Clearly not watching the finance meetings where Mr. Scrocky, sorry, Steve, in painstaking fashion in times, goes over budget transfers and the process, and we present every budget from every department. The fact that our audit the last, 9 years has had no findings. The fact that we've won the Meritorious Budget Award as one of 7 districts out of 500 in the state, 9 years running. It does kind of speak for itself. But really, let's talk about these things. If you want to talk about it, my phone number is 215-853-1230.
I'm waiting for it to start ringing right now.
Yeah, make it ring, Bob. No, it is on the website. You can get it through the switchboard. There's nothing to hide. Call me. Send me an email. I will schedule a meeting. We'll sit down and talk about it. But we're trying to be as honest and as transparent as possible. And for folks that don't want to listen, that's fine. But if you're interested in really asking questions and knowing the facts, I'm happy to help. Really.
Gotcha. So there are just other couple questions here. We could do this. We could literally sit here for the next 7 hours, I think, and keep doing. We're kind of refreshing some. I know, Jennifer, you had asked about, is there an option in between yes and no? We did talk about that a little bit earlier. I know you might have just been joining us here to go back to that and take a look at it again.
Hold on a second. I got to answer this call.
Oh.
Hey, Steve. He hung up. It was Mr. Strachey calling.
I was thinking we were going to do like a triple. We're going to get phone calls and texts in here. But I do think generally we got through most of your questions here.
I see one more about the baseball fields, Bob.
About being torn up in a no vote and a yes vote. I thought we mentioned that, but go ahead.
No, so the question was like no versus yes.
Yep.
So the yes does include in the estimates a turf baseball and softball field competition. Also a practice field for both of them. That would not be. But again, this is the yes was a wish list, right? Like all the things that, what are we hearing we want, we would like to see, all those things, and trying to garner that stakeholder feedback. Would we still have to have a baseball and softball field? Yes. Turf is not in those estimates. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about turf, whether it's good or bad, and studies out there. And a lot of the professional teams are moving to all natural fields. That is true. Professional sports teams have an entire department fixated on making Citizens Bank Park the best field it can possibly be. As a full-time job. They have a full team grounds crew. We don't, in a public school district, you don't have that, right? You don't have someone who's down there with scissors making it the perfect, most level field. We have a great crew who works really hard, but your resources are limited in a public entity. So we don't have this massive grounds crew that is solely focused on this field or that field. In an option 2, I do believe we would have a new all natural field. We would have to make renovations because the field would have to be, the electric supply would have to be torn up.
You know where it's at if you've gone to a baseball game, so it's sitting right there. You kind of see where the one box is, and if you look all the way out to the road, you see the main service there. I wanted to real quick. We'll get wrapped up here. It's 2.5 or an hour and a half. Sorry here. And if anybody's going to watch and scroll back here, they're going to find all these questions, right? And I said I'm going to throw some links in here that we have so you can go back when we talked about some of these presentations. I want to give a shout out back to, we have lots of people, but thank you to Justine, Shannon, William. Oh, everything just jumped. Fiona, Julie, thanking us for doing this today. Sarah here. Thank you for everybody participating today. We hope this has been helpful. Dr. Bauer, next Tuesday, what's going on next Tuesday? What do we need to do?
The weather is going to be beautiful. We are not going to get, please, in all of this, in all the effort, can we please not have bad weather? But yes, everyone needs to get out and vote. And if you have questions between now and then, please do. Someone reached out to me yesterday and said, hey, I have questions. Can we meet? And, looking at my calendar, looking at their calendar over the next couple of days, it was nearly impossible. Guess what, Bob? I met with that person at 6:50 this morning. Nice. I'll do anything I can for you. Seriously, I want you to be informed, to have the opportunity to have your questions answered. There are seats here. I will come to you, whatever it takes. And again, I'm respectful of your decision one way or the other. I just want your questions answered so that you can, the people who are blindly planning to fill in a bubble or pull a button or whatever it is, that's not what we want. We want informed voters who know what they're voting for, yes or no. Here is the opportunity. 9th grade, yes or no. We need to have that flexibility right now to do it. And it's just not fiscally possible if not. And that's fine. We can move forward to 10 to 12. And I think we do a nice job with that as well. So whatever it is, we'll put our best foot forward, do the best that we can to serve these students and community, because North Penn's a great place to be. And we plan on keeping it that way.
Excellent. Dr. Bauer, thank you for your time for the last hour and a half here. I hope it's been informative for everybody that's been viewing and commenting and watching. And I know a lot of people will watch this later, and you can for sure put questions in here too. Again, we're here to answer the questions, and we always keep promoting the reimaginenorthpennhighschool.org website. January 16th is the referendum day for the North Penn School District. Polls open at 7 a.m. I know Aaron just put in here about going to the Montgomery County Voter Services site. Keep in mind, this is while it's our referendum, it is the Montgomery County special election for this. So all the information about voting is on there on the site. You can also find that on the Reimagine site. So I think that's it, Dr. Bauer. I wish you a good day.
Thanks,
North
Bob.
Penn. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.